Hey guys, I'm Anna. Today is Monday, so we're going to be doing part 3 of our story, and I'm going to begin where we left off last week, which was right after I had had my daughter Arabella, and my family had just realized and found out that we were using drugs. They were extremely panicked. We had just had a newborn baby, and they were really concerned about us and the baby, and so they had turned to an intervention specialist who they had hired for guidance because I really just think they had no idea what they were doing with the situation, and they didn't really know quite how to handle it, so they hired an intervention specialist and they organized an intervention for me. So one day I got a phone call from my dad, and he had asked me to bring Arabella and come by his house. And when I arrived there, I walked in, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen the TV show Intervention, but it was very similar to the setup, how they do it on that TV show. I walked in, and everybody was kind of hidden. They were standing behind a doorway that had led down to the basement, and the door was closed, and I walked in, and I just, assumed it was just my dad there. And soon enough, all of a sudden, there was like 10 of my family members walking into the room, and they all sat me down, and there was this woman who I had never met before, and I actually exclaimed out loud. I was like, am I on intervention right now, you guys? Because, I was just like so surreal. So anyways, my family very, very kindly sat me down, and they all had written, really heartfelt letters, basically saying that they were really concerned and worried about me and about Arabella, and that they knew that we were having, some really big problems, and that they wanted me to be able to get help. And you can imagine I probably didn't quite take it very well at that point. I was really caught off guard. I did not like the idea that they had all, at that point, I had seen it as them banding against me and ganging up on me, and I felt really betrayed and kind of I don't know. It was not a good feeling for me at the time. Now looking back, I can completely understand where they were coming from. They were all just very scared, and they were doing it out of love, but I was just like, whoa, bombarded. Holy crap, are you guys serious? And after they had all read their letters to me, this woman who they had hired, the intervention specialist, which I'm sorry, but I really can't even remember her name, she had said, all right, Anna, so it's up to you to make a choice right now. If you want to keep your baby, then you have to go to detox right now. And I was completely caught off guard. I was like, what? Like, it was really surreal for me. I couldn't even believe it. So, I, of course, made the choice to go to detox. I was absolutely terrified. I'd never been in a situation like this before. I knew that we had had a drug problem, but I had still kind of seen myself as somebody who wasn't that bad. I wasn't doing heroin or meth or anything like that at this point. I was just doing pills. So I didn't really see it necessary for me to have to go to rehab like actual junkies did. That was my frame of mind at that point. But anyways, I did not want to lose my daughter, and so I agreed to go to detox, and from detox I was supposed to go directly to a 30-day treatment center. So detox was actually really traumatizing for me. The detox that I went to was kind of poorly set up, and it was state funded, and I just kind of think that I think it was almost like the government had forgotten about it. The people there weren't really helpful, and I was really scared when I walked in. I walked into hearing people screaming and crying. A lot of people were in pain, which is, it kind of goes with the territory. People were withdrawing off of drugs and alcohol, so that's kind of the way it goes. But I just remember getting on the phone in there and calling my boyfriend and calling my parents and begging them, like, please, you guys gotta get me out of here. This is horrible. I can't stay here. And I needed to be there for, I think, at least 5 days. So I had some time to get through, and I was absolutely horrified. So but I did it. I made it through detox. I started feeling a little better, and then the intervention specialist had come and picked me up with my mother and my mom's friend, I believe, and they drove me out to the Tri-Cities, where I went to my very first 30-day inpatient treatment center. And that was it wasn't a terrible experience at all. It was new for me, and it was crowded, and it was very overwhelming. But I think had I been ready to get clean, I might have gotten more out of it than I had actually gotten at that point. I really wasn't in the frame of mind of, I didn't have any desire to get clean at that point. I still was not seeing myself as a drug addict. I didn't understand or see why people thought I needed this, because like I said before, I didn't see myself as a junkie, so I didn't think I needed help. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, but I was doing what I needed to do to get my daughter back. So as you can imagine, I got through that treatment center and got out, and really just it didn't stick because I wasn't ready to receive the information or use the tools I was given. So I got out, and I briefly lived with my dad, and then my daughter and my boyfriend and I moved in with my grandparents and rented their mother-in-law apartment in the bottom part of their house. And things went pretty well actually for a couple of months. Both my boyfriend and I had been clean, but then we relapsed, and instead of relapsing on the pills, we actually relapsed on methamphetamine. So that was my introduction to meth, and we both got pretty strung out, and over a period of months, eventually we got kicked out of my grandma's house. And so this is kind of where I'm going to end the story. I will say that just like many times to come, my boyfriend and I, I think all the stress that we were under, and we were fighting all the time, and then we were using, and it was really a stressful, chaotic environment. So we ended up being kicked out of my grandparents' house, and we kind of ended up going our separate ways. And at this point, he went to his cousin's, and then I kind of was like at a loss. I didn't really know where to go or what to do, but I just was in a very rebellious mode, and I was going to be on my own. My boyfriend had my daughter, and I headed up north, and I was willing to do whatever it was that I needed to do to be able to take care of myself, support myself, and be independent. And so this is when I started prostituting to support myself, and then my drug habit, which increased extremely from this point forward. So this is where I'm going to leave off. I will be picking up here next week for our story piece and kind of get into that with you guys. This is kind of where it gets a little bit more interesting, and where my use kind of gets really heavy, and more of the Quentin Tarantino, as my mom would put it, things happen. So we're really glad you guys are watching. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Hi again. I'm Ann, Anna's mom. So we left off with Anna going off to rehab after the intervention, and that meant that Arabella came to live with me and the 3 teenage daughters that we still had at home, and my husband at the time. So that was a beautiful thing, though I was not prepared to have an infant. And all of those lovely layette gifts that came from friends and family at Anna's shower and leading up to Arabella being born, that stuff was gone. So I got a tiny baby and a car seat and a dirty diaper bag. So I'd just been laid off my job, which was very fortuitous because I was now a stay-at-home grandmother with an infant. But that also meant that money was really tight. So I put a message up on Facebook and just said, hey, anybody who's got used baby stuff, like as of today, right now, I need, a crib, a high chair, all these different things. And what happened was really astounding. Our community, the Snoqualmie Valley community there in Washington, really stepped up. A lot of those same ladies who had bought really expensive gifts and come to a baby shower for a friend of theirs' daughter who they barely knew, knew what was going on with Anna, knew about the addiction, and they brought gifts again. So I ended up with so much baby stuff at our house, we could have opened our own baby supply store. In fact, it was people came by and brought beautiful, gorgeous, lovely things. It was really a beautiful experience. I was really, I guess, a little concerned about the shame factor in our community and what people would think that my daughter is a drug addict. I've always tried to be really open about whatever's going on with us, but this was a pretty big one. And we were open about it, and those folks really came through, and they loved up that baby, and they loved me up, and they loved up our whole family, and they sent a lot of thoughts and prayers for Anna too. So that was a beautiful part of it. Anna wasn't allowed to have any visitors, I think, for the first 10 days she was in rehab, and she was about 5 hours away across the state. Once she was, drove out there with her dad and her sisters. I didn't know what to expect because we were just learning how to do this whole be the parents of somebody with addiction thing. And we learned a lot from the intervention specialist and from reading. And so I was familiar with tough love and that concept. When we got out to the rehab facility, it was a dingy, dirty place and stucco building out in a really dry climate area. But Anna said that she was sleeping in a same room with 5 other women, which was kind of weird to me. Bunk beds, and we got to see the room, and it was just a room with bunk beds and like a dresser. There was barely any room for them to put any of their stuff. We toured the place, and I thought it looked more like a crappy prison. I was really unimpressed. And then when she told me what they had to eat, they had plenty of food. It wasn't that. It was just all like boxed mashed potatoes and cake and jello and sugar and sugar and sugar and a lot of simple carbohydrates and really crappy quality. I was really kind of surprised. I didn't know what to expect, and I was not an expert about addiction at all, but I thought it was kind of strange that people who were basically going through the fight of their lives, and opioid addiction is a really difficult thing to deal with, were being treated more like animals than human beings. And I don't mean to take away from the professionals who are working in that industry, and I think there are probably a lot of really wonderful recovery centers. And it was clear that the people who were working in the one Anna was in to begin with were devoted to the work they were doing, but they weren't given very many tools and materials, it seemed like, to create a healing space. So it seemed more like a punishment space to me. But we thought, hey, this is the way it's supposed to be. The people who design these programs must know what they're doing because they are the professionals and they must be very successful at it. Anyway, that's what I thought at the time. But it did strike me as really odd. So we went over just a couple of times to visit because it was a big ordeal and it needed to happen on Saturday between only, 3-hour period of time. So it was a big, long day. And then she ended up coming home, and I know she's going to talk more about that. She came home and stayed with her dad for a little while, and then I'll let her tell the rest of that story. In the meantime, shortly after Anna went off to rehab, her boyfriend got a hold of me and asked if he could come and stay with us. He needed a place to stay. He was looking for some help and support specifically around staying clean and detoxing until he could get into a rehab facility. And it took him a little bit longer to get in. So he came to stay with us, and that was a really good thing. We'll talk a lot more about that down the road. Thank you so much.